It's the 6th of January. We've been working very hard over the last 1 year to get these 8 sessions over the next 2 days for you. I promise you, the people sitting in front and heading here are going to be path changers for you in the way you think. Yeah. I would like to invite on stage Uday Sriram. Put your hands together. Deloitte Consulting India. Suneet Rikhi, CSO Your Labs. Gurinder Singh Sohi, USA professor, Wisconsin. He won a lot of stuff for his university very recently, one of the famous people from BITS. Samrat Kulkarni from UK, Nokia Bell Labs. Uday is a director with Deloitte in their India offices, an engineer by qualification. He has close to 25 years of consulting experience. Since joining Deloitte in 2005, he has held very many significant positions, and he currently is the regional service line leader for Deloitte 1,800 strong SAP practice in India. After graduating from BITS Pilani in 1991, my proud batchmate, Uday joined in Engineers India Limited, New Delhi. He joined Intelli Group. He lives now in Hyderabad with his wife and daughter. He's a fitness enthusiast and loves cycling. I will hand over to the moderator of this session on bots and robots. Uday, the stage is yours.
Thank you. All right, guys, I got a tough job. I've got a very eminent panel to manage, right? I thought I will start with my introduction, but she already introduced, so I don't have anything else to say, right? This is a 1-hour session, so we are going to have the panelists who are very eminent introduce themselves first, and then we are going to have each of them do a TED-style talk, which lasts about 5 to 6 minutes each, right? And then we want this to be an interactive session. We want all of you to ask questions. I know there are very eminent technologists in the audience somewhere hiding. Mani, are you there? Mani? Yes, Mani is there. Then the gentleman who founded Grey Orange. There are lots of technologists amongst us, right? And I hope this discussion is going to be interactive and engaging as well, right? With that, I request Guri, you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Yeah,
it's not on. This mic.
And been at the University of Wisconsin for 31 and a half years now. And I finally did get to visit BITS in 2014 for the first time after I left in 1981. And I'm delighted to be here.
All right, thank you. Samrat?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Samrat Kulkarni. I guess I feel like I'm one of the youngest here. I graduated in 99, went to the States, to Purdue, to do my PhD program, but I ended up quitting halfway. My professors will not be proud of that. I got my master's. I worked for Bell Laboratories. We go back to the days of Alexander Graham Bell, and I've been with them for 17 years now. And more recently, I've dabbled in data science and analytics. I went to NYU Stern to do one of their executive programs. So happy to be here, happy to talk about technology, data science, AI.
I'm the oldest and I like to sit next to the youngest. I'm Suneet Rikhi, 1974 to 1979, Triple E badge. Spent 31 years as a lifer in Intel Corporation. Just recently left it and have started a company in healthcare.
All right. So, like I said, we're going to have short talks, TED-style talks, which lasts no more than 5 to 6 minutes, and then we will get back to the questions, right? So, we want to start off with Suneet's talk.
Okay, it's a privilege to talk to you today. Let me start by sharing a photograph that I found when I searched, out of the thousands, that when I searched for the word digital revolution. And the next photograph I'll show you is a depiction by a blockchain article talking about the oncoming tsunami in the financial world. The point of these two pictures is that you can choose your own two pictures from the thousands that are out there to view, to represent your view of the digital revolution. But one thing is for sure that we will agree that we are in the midst of a phenomenal exponential. And what I want to do today is to approach the exponential, approach digital revolution from the point of view of its core, what drives it, its fuel. So for that, just consider this machine, a powerful, immense machine from the past. Its core is the firebox that starts its roar and completes its roar. In the digital revolution, it's the transistor that is at the root or the core of digital revolution. I was fortunate enough to spend 30 years in and around and working on this transistor in various areas within Intel. And so my perspectives on digital revolution are going to be informed by and influenced by the transistor. So that is the journey I will take you to in the next 5 minutes to give you my perspective on digital revolution. So what makes the transistor so powerful, so exponential, is that it reinvents itself every couple of years with a much better version of itself. It's faster, so we can do more with it. It's smaller, so we can use a lot of them, much more of them than before, and they fit into small crevices of our lives. It's cooler, so we can fit all of them into very small thermal envelopes. And most importantly, it's free. To make my point about it being free, just consider this. 4 years, a span of 4 years from 2012 to 2017, we added 2.5 billion transistors into your pocket at approximately the same price point. Now, if that's not a case for calling the transistor free, then nothing is. This is a free transistor at work. Now, the transistor exponential, therefore, is at the heart of the digital revolution, but that is not sufficient. There is a second force that is causing the digital revolution that is at the core and is causing all the momentum. And the second force is integration. So with all these transistors, billions and billions in your pocket coming in, the challenge is to integrate all of them together. And the integration starts with components, integrated circuits, modules, subsystems, and systems. But the beauty of this whole thing is that the systems of today are components of tomorrow. And thus, integration continues to go and integrate more and more and more of these transistors that are free flowing into you. This results in a capability spiral, which is the backbone of the digital revolution. When the transistor was invented in the middle of last century, since then to now, we've shipped about 500 billion transistors per person living on this earth. They are in us, they are on us, they are around us, they surround us. They are everywhere. They are permeating social, political, physical boundaries and going everywhere to create something larger than ourselves, something intelligent, something only we, the intelligent and the creative, could have created and are in the process of creating. They are also permeating all economic sectors of the world. There is not a single sector that is not affected by the transistor. The transistor is infesting every nook and cranny of the economic sectors. There are two forces within them that are contemporary today that are forcing the digital revolution to go at a momentum and speed that is unprecedented. One is automation. Automation in the semiconductor industry was about 15 years ahead of the automation in the rest of the world, and now 15 years later, I can tell you that it's the gap is closing very rapidly. Artificial intelligence is another one, and some of my friends on the panel are going to touch upon that, but those are the two forces. What are the dividends of this digital revolution? Of course, there is health. We are living healthily, and we have access to better health care. There is access to resources and instant access to resources, abundance of resources. Same with knowledge. And finally, we have the choice more and more to spend the time the way we choose to spend the time and not the way we have to spend the time. With dividends comes threat. Threats include, first and foremost, inequality to the access to dividends. Beyond that is safety. The larger the systems we make, the more impact it has positively and negatively. So both malintent and error can be devastating to society. Same with privacy and security. Now, I want to finish up by a comment on this David Arthur, who has spoken on a TED Talk with that topic. In that, he says that if I was a farmer in Iowa in 1900 and somebody from this day and age came back to him and informed him that, and said, hey farmer, you will in 100 years, our employment, farm employment will go from 40% of the workforce to 2% of the workforce entirely due to productivity. He says, I hope that my reaction would be wise enough to say that that is awesome. I hope humanity finds a way to use the other people productively and to do something good with prosperity. And Arthur claims that in the next 100 years that happened, he would say that largely humanity did do wonderful things with that prosperity. I am confident, looking into the future, that I'm optimistic like him, that whatever happens, our dividends are going to far outnumber and outpower the threats. And just to make that point, just 3 days ago, Finland became one of the latest countries to experiment with basic income guarantee that would allow them, Finland people, to do what they want with their time and have less inequality in access to prosperity. And with that, I thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sunit. That was well with time.
Well, thank you. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, you heard about Moore's Law in the morning and this digital revolution and microprocessor, which is at the heart of all the digital revolution. Just describe you a little bit of my experience being in academia about the digital revolution. So, this is just a slide, recent slide upon the great improvements that have happened in microprocessors, the number of transistors in a chip, and the performance and so on of different chips. And I started after getting a PhD at the University of Wisconsin in 1985, and the first million transistor chip did not come out till 1989, which was the Intel 486. So there's still, chips with 100, 200,000 transistors. And I have several of my batchmates over here, and they always knew to me as somebody to be always doing something different and go along with everybody else. So when everybody went to the complex variables class taught by Professor Goel, I, at 2 p.m. after lunch, would go to civil block and be the only student sitting in Professor Chima's class. So Professor Chima would be lecturing, and I would be the only student in class, okay? So I always like to do things differently. And so in the very first thing, we decided, how might we try and build microprocessors, 10 years into the future? And we started doing that as my first piece of research. Everybody in the industry was talking about different ways of doing things. And in fact, in 1989, there was a very famous article written by the 4 top execs of Intel called How Microprocessors Circa 2000, which was how they viewed Intel's microprocessors to look like in the year 2000. And what we were doing was very different at that time. We had a very different model for building microprocessors. And 10 years later, in 1996, Intel adopted that as the microprocessor design, starting in the Pentium Pro generation. And many tens of billions have been sold since that point. And so, but at that time, being as one of the handful of academics studying some of this stuff, going against industry, the bigwigs of industry, in your mid-20s was not something that we had a great degree of confidence in, but we pursued it because we felt that was good. Now then, after getting the initial recognition, then we started feeling, okay, now let's shoot much further. What's going to happen much further down the road? So in the next decade, we started looking at is what would happen when we had transistors with over a billion chips with a billion transistors. And had the job security due to tenure, so we did much more forward-looking research. And I remember going to major companies like IBM and Motorola who were building the leading-edge microprocessors and describing them what we had in mind. And senior execs saying, this guy's off his rocker. What you're talking about will never, ever see the light of day. But we pursued, and we kept doing that. And then, some of the techniques we developed 20 years ago are now, again, in every iPhone, for example. Okay. This is, what we could do is anybody else can do. We all got the same education. We have the same thinking, in a sense. It's just that we wanted to be much more aggressive and be much more forward-looking rather than go with the flow. So, we've continued doing some other stuff in the third decade, stuff that is likely to, see more light 10 years, in the next 8 or 10 years, as how microprocessors are going to be built. And then there's always, the lessons we've learned is that there always will be new areas for computing, okay? And for every new area, there'll be new opportunities for innovation. However, for the technology to proliferate, it has to be very easy to use and it has to be very transparent, okay? So, when I started out, there were people, they would have these specialized machines and you would write your programs for those specialized machines. Gone are those days. Now you have millions and millions of programmers who are so far removed from the hardware that they just assume that the hardware innovations are going to happen and they're going to continue the constant performance improvement. So it is the job of all the engineers between the people writing the programs and all the way to the transistors to make sure that that improvement happens transparently. That's critical, okay? So as we go into the future, mobile was the big thing in the last few years. Now there's, learning, analytics, autonomous vehicles, the applications for computing, the angle, it's becoming huge. Everything is going to be some computing application. There are new design constraints. Previously it was all about performance, and power and energy are now tier 1 design constraints. And there are going to be all sorts of new models for specialized hardware components. And the key feature is going to be, how can we make them usable in a transparent manner? That is going to be the big challenge, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities, a lot of room for innovation, and we're looking forward to some of the younger people creating some of that innovation. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Guri. All right, Samrat. Thank you, sir.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to sort of switch topics a little bit and talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. And you heard Professor Bastaki mention that word. If you're reading in the news, there's a lot of investment happening in this space. So give you my view of where I think the future is going to be. And I'm going to put forward certain arguments. These are up for debate. So hopefully this will be an interactive panel discussion and we can talk more about that. So let's, machine learning in the news, right? So you see a lot of investment, companies like Twitter buying other companies. There's a lot of data. People are leaving a lot of digital footprint, which means you can learn a lot about a person and then you can customize services for that person, make people feel special, hence they'll buy more products from you and everybody makes money. So that's sort of one application of machine learning AI. And then we're also seeing AI, machine learning, enabling a lot of creative sort of tasks. This interesting example where IBM Watson was used to create a recipe that was really mouth-watering. I think it was a Moroccan dish or something. None of the chefs in the world could figure it out. So, and you'll see Watson designing clothes for fashion shows. So machines are getting into the realm of being creative as well. And then there are challenges. How many of you have heard of a chatbot called Tay from Microsoft? Yeah, I see a couple of hands, right? So if you remember that experiment, Tay was essentially a chatbot. They gave it a personality of a 16-year-old millennial, a teenager, and it was supposed to interact with the world over Twitter. This was Microsoft's grand experiment. So they released Tay out. Tay started out well, and then very quickly, it learned from the people on the internet and, went down the route of doing all sorts of nasty things, so much so that Microsoft had to shut it down in 16 hours, I think it was. It actually makes our president-elect in my country, look like an angel compared to what Tay was tweeting. So there are various challenges around AI when you try to replicate human behavior. Humans have to worry about ethics, privacy, and various other things. You expect machines to be like humans, so they would have to deal with some of these issues as well. So that is, so there's a number of different angles in this area. So let me ground this and see why is AI and machine learning why is it relevant today? And one framework I like to use is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People in the social sciences and psychology field, you're probably familiar with this. Are you guys familiar with? Yeah. So the idea there is, you have to meet some of your basic needs, physiological needs at the bottom, and then before you grow up this hierarchy, right? So my argument is when you look at successful machine learning AI applications, those are the ones that will help humans climb up this hierarchy. Anything that lets them do that is where value is being created, and I would hope those would be some of the successful applications. So simply put, I like to think of it in terms of this notion of creating time. By the way, somebody redid this study recently, like his Maslow's study was done in the 50s, and asked, where does Wi-Fi fit in? And they said it's even below the physiological needs. So, so to your point about digital revolution and connectivity and all of that, that's obviously very important. But creating time, and then the other angle is around trust. When people are sharing their information, sharing their data, you trust that that is secure, it's not hacked. I think Professor Bestocki talked about hacking a body area network. So as long as these things can be met, and within this framework, I see AI and machine learning getting mainstream, getting more accepted in society, and so on. Now, in terms of the technology itself, there's a lot going on in this area, right? Researchers are doing different things. The industry is investing, startups as well as established companies. So one of the things we've done here at Bell Labs is create a framework to fit all the activity that's happening today. So it's a two-dimensional framework here. Think of it as if you look at the vertical axis, it's what we call machines essentially require some sort of training data, right, to teach them. And the level of that training data, which is less or more, that would be one sort of dimension. The other dimension is in terms of thinking. how close you are towards thinking like a human, essentially. So if you look at all these dimensions, you can fit a number of different activities in this space. I am in the telecom industry when it comes to things like radio, network control, resource management, self-optimizing networks. Those all require very little amount of training data. And they're like more machine-like processes. Essentially, speed is critical, right? You use GPUs, you do a lot of computation. But then as you move towards what IBM Watson, for example, or Cortana and Siri, and some of these applications people have used, they are more human-like. They understand context. If you ask a question, you expect an answer, which is not just a pattern match of something, it's actually like having a conversation with a human. You ask a review for a movie, for example, it gives you the review, and then you say, what time is the movie playing? And it knows where you are, your most closest theater, and all of that. So today, if you look at all the advancements that have been made in this space, they tend to be in this zone towards the bottom right there, what we call supervised learning, right? So, and it requires a lot of training data. But the holy grail is to move towards the right and the top there. Have you guys seen the movie Her? It's a movie that's popular in the States, where a guy falls in love with a woman that actually turns out to be a machine and doesn't require a lot of training. So that's sort of where we want to get to, and we're not there yet. There is some groundbreaking work being done right now with adversarial networks and so on. But I would say for the next 5 to 10 years, when you talk to the top researchers, we're still going to be in this realm of supervised learning. So lastly, in terms of how I see the industry evolving and the business models, essentially what you're going to see is these sort of three models. One is a vertical specific model where AI, machine learning will be used for very specific applications, things in healthcare. The example of Atomwise is very interesting. You guys remember the Ebola outbreak that happened a couple of years ago. People were panicked, they didn't know what to do. So this company, Atomwise, came up with a way to find essentially a cure for Ebola virus by reconstituting existing drugs. So what would have taken months and years with trials and so on, these guys were able to build a model for the virus itself, go and look at all the drugs that are out there today already and see which of them are most likely to cure Ebola, and they've made a breakthrough in that space. So we're going to see a lot of those sort of vertical specific applications. The other model is the one in the middle, which is what I call the horizontal model, where you create a platform that many applications can leverage. And lastly, this whole notion of an open source framework. Elon Musk has created an example with OpenAI. So the point here is not just big corporations can have access to technology. Everybody in the world should be able to leverage the breakthroughs in AI machine learning, and that's the one that would make sure it gets mass acceptance. So I'll stop here with my messages, and we can discuss more in the panel.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Samrat. I'm into business consulting, right? I don't have slides to just say the few things before I launch into the Q&A session, right? So we talked about transistors, we talked about microprocessors, we talked about machine learning. How is all this impacting business? There are significant impacts on the business. One of the recent advances is what we call as robotic process automation. You know, there are so many BPOs in India. I'm sure there'll be some who were part of that journey as well. And all these basic processes that were erstwhile done by human beings are now being done by software, right? Software robots, which are also called as bots. So now the new evolution or the new trend is how to make these robotic process automation processes more cognitive, right? Combining cognitive technologies, the IBM Watson that Samrat was talking about is a more cognitive technology, right? Which, you know, erstwhile what we thought only humans could do, like natural language processing, like speech recognition, like computer vision, etc., combining these cognitive technologies with robotic process automation to do more and more things that humans were required to do by using machines and software, right? So what's going to happen to our workforce itself, right? It's going to be an amazing journey as we go through, right? What are human beings going to be doing? There was a recent article that I read by Peter Diamandis. He's part of the Singularity University, where he says that the cost of everything, right? He did an analysis of where most of our spend in our lives is, like housing, healthcare, food, energy, education. There are some 7 categories, and he takes on each of them and explains how technology has the potential to drive down the cost in each of them exponentially, almost tending towards zero, right? So what are we going to be spending on? What are we going to be doing, right? So it is going to be an amazing journey. While some of us may be skeptical on losing jobs, etc., right? But human beings do evolve over a period of time to adapt to the new situations, right? What 40% of the people were doing agriculture at some point in time are no longer doing. So we do evolve, right? So it's going to be an interesting journey. With that, I'm going to stop and then open the floor for questions on any of these various topics that we started. We're going to have runners with mics.
I'm Sushil Birla. I'm a senior technical advisor with the US federal government in the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Graduated in 1964, started in Pilani in 1959. My question is about the digital divide. On the one hand, you just concluded with a vision that some people will be so high up in the Maslow's hierarchy that you'll be looking for some place above the peak. But then there are the others who cannot share in the technology, who will be below the Wi-Fi level. What role do you see artificial intelligence and machine learning in addressing this digital divide? In other words, if I'm one of those who can't make it in this world, how do I leverage machine technology to uplift myself?
So so first thing, let me explain that thing. So the reason I used the Maslow's hierarchy was not to say that you have to always be at the top, right? But it was more of a framework to see how humans move up the chain. But my view is, in any of these layers, including the physiological layer, AI and machine learning will play a big role to help people achieve each of those layers, no matter where they are. So for example, let's talk about hunger and food, right? There are a number of companies that are working in this space where they're trying to minimize food wastage. What they found is a lot of food gets wasted. If you look at the whole end-to-end cycle, from harvesting, agriculture, all the way to the food that goes in the supermarkets. So there's different companies that are tracking or trying to solve problems along these different steps in the chain and trying to minimize that. So the hope is with that, the benefits, everybody can reap the benefits of some of that. So that might be one example. Getting access to clean water, having farmers get accurate weather forecasts. There's a company that does a lot of creative things around identifying the soil conditions and how they can leverage AI techniques and sort of geo-imaging techniques that has never been done before to help them improve crop productivity, for example. So I think there's a number of different applications, and so that's one angle to that. The other angle is this whole open AI movement, which is what Elon Musk's primary driver was, right? He said, it's not just the Googles and the Facebooks and the IBMs that need access to this technology. Let's make sure that everybody in the general population gets access to the breakthroughs. So any new toolkits, they just came out with the reinforcement learning toolkit. So you and I, or anybody sitting here that has access to a computer, I guess you need some basic broadband connectivity. You can leverage some of those state-of-the-art AI algorithms and apply that to your specific use case in your region that's local and make a change. So it's the combination of this being open and being used to address every single level in that hierarchy, I think is how I would see it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Samrat. Guri, did you want to add something to the digital divide question?
I think first of all, salute to you, sir. You're my senior. I think the answer to such questions, by and large, lies in our past. From the introduction of computers to cell phones to everything, I mean, you look at all the technology that has been introduced in the last 100 years, this question has always been there. Are we going to create an inequality of access? And I think there is no limit to human creativity in terms of being able to cope with the change that's coming. Now, it is important to note that there is no technology or no, like in the morning they said, there's no R&D that's worth anything unless it is made easy enough and accessible enough. So by that litmus test, things that are actually going to be pervasive are going to come with handholders that take people along.
Yep.
So I'm actually not as optimistic as these gentlemen over here. In fact, in Wisconsin, when I go to the gym, I talk with one of my colleagues, who gets credit for inventing the stem cells, and he's equally pessimistic about what the future holds in the age of rapid deployment of technology that really is disturbing a lot of human jobs, especially at the low level. Now, is it the role of engineers to be answering those questions or addressing those issues? I think we can act as advisors to people who really are, much more experts. But again, I think we can defer that nobody has expertise in any of this. Since we are the ones who are creating the technology, we can help others understand the consequences and implications of it. But the broader society has to address these issues, and they're going to be, I think, increase in relevance much, much more as we move forward.
Right, I'm Jishnu Mukherjee, 1977 MSc Tech Computer Science. First batch of computer science actually out of BITS.
Wow.
So one of the problems that has come out over the last several months in course of the presidential election in the United States is the problem of virtual reality created by collection of false news with further positive feedback from bot-like human beings. Do you have any idea how to deal with that? I mean, it's a real issue.
Go ahead, Sunit.
Yeah, actually in my talk I did mention that the scale at which we make an impact these days is so high that any error or malintent can be devastating to society. I think you are touching upon a very, one of the many examples that can actually be, you look at it and you say, wow, how did that happen? And I think this is a very real danger, and the only solution is correcting by construction any flaws that can cause such systematic damage to the system. Fake news is just one example, but you can do very little things to create a devastating impact.
So this is an issue with chaos theory to some extent too, right? But they say that a butterfly's flutter in Brazil can create a war in the Middle East or something like that.
Yeah.
So this is a very, I remember the first internet worm that was sent out by Robert Morris. I remember that day very clearly as all our computers went down. And these days, nobody thought that somebody would do something like that. When it did happen, we recovered and we developed techniques to deal with this. So the same kind of, intelligent bots will be created to deal with those techniques like that. That's my view.
Yeah. Well, Guri is not
So
so
you
optimistic.
actually-
He has solutions for all the problems that we have.
Suddenly you sound more optimistic than your previous answer.
I mean, the day Robert Morris sent out that worm, 87, I believe it was, something like 1987, you know, and our computers went down. I remember the day very clearly. And what happened? You know, we are all sitting in, what happened? How did this happen? And I actually, there was a talk that had been given by a Cornell professor, and I said, I bet Morris is, I bet it's a grad student putting that guy's theories into practice. And it was basically population infection, you know, how infections go through populations, okay? And I forget the name of the Cornell professor who was doing some of that. And you know, so we will develop techniques to deal with these unexpected things.
Okay. All right. So we had a, sir.
Yeah. So you see that this non-deterministic knowledge is coming back with lots of energy and vigor. Probability and statistics is going to have a major play. AI is making a beautiful comeback. And so question to the experts is, how do you expect academic institutes like BITS Pilani to respond to this? What's your expectation? How do we gear up, and how do we, just introducing courses in these areas, or a little more specialized programs in these areas? I mean, what's the education space going to, how are you going to respond? What's the best way to train our future kids?
The basics is still the most important, I think. You know, we can't be creating a general purpose, broad-based education based on what is hot that day. You know, we've seen all the time is, you know, some company people would come and say, well, we want you to teach this technique or this programming language or this course, and well, that changes next year. So the broad-based education is still going to be very relevant, and you can have specialization in different things via projects.
Which I think we were all taught at BITS, right? Being able to learn every day. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, the way I look at it, the reason, like I said, some of the fundamental techniques have been around for a while, but the reason it's accelerated over the past is, one is all the innovation on the hardware side, right? But the other thing is also, I think, participation from the community in general. The movement is everything's become open source. You can contribute to open source libraries in the machine learning world, R and Python and whatever tool of choice you have. So one thing I would say is actively encourage your students to be part of that open source movement. Contribute code, learn some basic code, always be active, see what's happening, and get engaged. I don't think that would cost a lot of investment, and being actively involved in that. It's no longer proprietary, because what's proprietary is the data itself. But some of the methodologies and the libraries and creating that and being actively involved should certainly help them develop those skills.
All right, yeah.
So my answer would be cross-disciplinary integration exercise. I think that to me is key. And it's happening everywhere in innovation in the industry and everything. People love to create teams that represent all industry segments, cross-disciplinary. And if you can do that in the university through electives, let's build something together, and you force disciplines to come together and integrate, that's beautiful.
Hi, this is MS Rangaraj, Ricky's batch 74, computer science. So thanks for raising that question, because I was going to ask the same question. So I'm from the industry. I consult in the space of digital transformation. So I will answer, give the perspective. But the thing is, you can have the basics, like Sudhi, you said. One of the things that one is seeing is it's a paradigm shift, right? Mm-hmm. So it is not only the technology and the techniques that need to be known, but it is the way you think, which is so very fundamentally different from what most of us have experienced. So how do you inculcate that into education, right, is an important piece. And to the last point that you mentioned, I don't know how many of you are aware of this integrated stuff being done at one of our own professors, right in Singapore, Singularity University, where Professor Mathur, who taught most of us in computer science, is doing a lot of this integrated work and running those programs out there. So,
I am Vinod Dhanuka, 1968 mechanical, BITS Pilani. My question is more fundamental. You must have read about in newspapers about the very severe pollution problems in cities like Delhi and Mumbai. So what technology or artificial intelligence could do to control this severe pollution in our cities like Mumbai and Delhi?
Have a perspective?
That's a tough one. Self-driving cars, I would say.
Exactly. Autonomous cars, yeah.
Maybe autonomous vehicles that can manage energy efficiently, but I think that's still a far way out. It is a tough problem. I mean, obviously there's different causes for that, right? And AI is just, to me, AI has always been what I would call plumbing. It's just the underlying capability to do things. But for AI to work, you really need to have domain experts, you need to have the data, and then you can apply these techniques to solve the problem. So you still need, smart city planning experts, experts that understand the causes of pollution, all of that. AI by itself can be the solution to all problems in the world, right? Think of it as just a tool, a sort of plumbing. And again, I'm not an expert in this field, so that's about all I can say in terms of. But self-driving cars, certainly one of the hopes there is that it helps manage some aspects of pollution besides avoiding deaths and some of the other.
That problem is going to go away. I don't know how long, I cannot predict. But with solar energy, with these autonomous cars, battery operated, that problem of pollution per se and how we use energy and how we generate energy, it is going to go away, but it's going to take some time. That's one of the topics discussed by this Peter Diamandis, who's also part of the Singularity University. They're doing amazing stuff in this space of how technologies addressing our lives. Right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your audience, for your participation, panelists. Thank you very much. I know a lot went into preparation to do this 1 hour session in front of these people.
They have been the panel that has been preparing for the longest. So a big round of applause, almost 6 months of preparation for these 40 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Uday, for doing it well, and also very pertinent to start with this because technology is ruling our world like never before. And many of us are struggling with how much is good, how long we have to be wedded to technology and so on. Just a few logistic announcements. There's a campus tour that is starting every half an hour from the foyer. So you can use that to just see the campus at any time. There's a city tour being organized, and that is also going to take from the foyer. So please find out for today, tomorrow. Also, the audience has been wonderful. Big round of applause for you. No mobile phones went off. Yeah. Maybe you're not connected, but that's another story. But it's been a pleasure not to have ringing phones. So compliments to you.